Alright, here we go. Let's talk Protection Paladin in patch 11.1. In this video, we're going to walk through the new tier set for the Protection Paladin and my experience testing it on the public test realm. Let's not beat around the bush and get right into it. Similar to all the other tanks, the 2 and 4 set has a big focus on the new Luck of the Draw buff. For those who live under a rock, the tier sets in this patch will have role-based tier sets that attempt to create a similar gameplay loop. For tanks specifically, the idea is that when you take damage, you have a chance to proc your class's main defensive cooldown. As expected, this works great for some, and others, not so much. For the Protection Paladin, the 2 set reads, each time you take damage, you have a chance to activate Luck of the Draw, causing you to gain Guardian of Ancient Kings for 4 seconds. Your damage done is then increased by 15% for 10 seconds after Luck of the Draw activates. The 4 set builds on this, and it reads, while you have Luck of the Draw active, Shield of the Righteous refunds 1 to 3 holy power and extends the duration of Luck of the Draw by 0.5 seconds up to 10. Now, this is a gambler's build if I've ever seen one. Guardian of Ancient Kings, at least for tanks, is one of the stronger defensive cooldowns, granting a massive 50% damage reduction. But that's not where this set's power comes from. The real juice of this lies within the 4 set bonus. Whenever you do see that Guardian proc, you also gain Luck of the Draw, which gives you not only a 15% damage gain, but, unlike any other tank, this can be extended. As you spam Shield of the Righteous, you'll basically have holy power refunded to you. So as you spam Shield of the Righteous, you'll gain holy power, and every time you cast, you'll be extending Luck of the Draw by half a second. Basically machine gun shields. Let's go. Before we get into the testing, I do want to talk about some of the talent implications here. Protection Paladin is seeing some minor nerfs, and I mean like extremely minor nerfs going into patch 11.1. Both Seal of the Crusader and Lightforged Blessing, these talents have their healing being cut in half. Now, Seal of the Crusader is not really a frequently played spell, and due to the new 4 set, you'll be casting a lot more Shield of the Righteous, so the nerf to Lightforged Blessing is fairly justified. There is also a small nerf to Refining Fire, making it less competitive but still a strong enough option to justify taking when trying to push out damage. Beyond class and spec talents, the hero talents have seen some adjustments as well. Templar is seeing an actual buff to Undisputed Ruling, which will now not only apply a Consecrate, but alongside this, it's also going to grant you Shield of the Righteous for 4 seconds, making it a lot more fluid to play since you aren't sacrificing holy power to slam big damage. For those who are Paladin enjoyers, this change, accompanied by the tier set, is looking really, really good. Lightsmith did also see a documented change very recently that causes Tempered in Battle to only be able to proc once per application, which can be considered a nerf, but it also means less griefing your group by double dipping on health leech. As for talent synergies, honestly there isn't really much going on here. There isn't a lot of depth to the set, and I don't see any major talent shifts for this class going into 11.1, for at least Mythic Plus specifically. The tier set is just extra holy power economy, which is strange since warriors are in the state that they are. Obviously, the only major complaint that I or really any player can point out is that this tier set is easily the most RNG-esque. Not only are you hoping for this defensive proc on taking damage, but also during Luck of the Draw buff, you're essentially praying that you're going to get the maximum refund of 3 holy power instead of just 1. But even when you do get 3 holy power refunded to you, depending on if you have wings available or judgment charges, it's very easy to overcap, which does feel bad. Personally, I would prefer this just to always be a static amount, like 2, instead of it being 1 to 3, but honestly, that's just like a minor complaint. With this out of the way, let's dive into a dungeon or two. So I started my testing as Lightsmith, mostly as a comfort choice. As of now, Operation Floodgate is the only available dungeon for testing, and like the slacker I am, I waited until Monday night to test it, so PTR is quiet. It took us over 25 minutes to find a full group. While I was waiting around, I did notice that there may or may not be a bug that prevents you from casting Shield of the Righteous unless there is a target within melee range. I'd be surprised if this isn't a bug and it's an intended change. It doesn't really cause any issues, but I just think it's funny. So we slotted a 12 Floodgate, and there really wasn't much I was looking for here. The only major question I have, of course, was the tier set uptime and the proc rate. Guardian of Ancient Kings doesn't really affect how a Paladin plays throughout a key, but the 4 set has a very cool interaction. The only thing I will say is that Protection Paladin kit doesn't necessarily feel great, at least from a crowd control angle. There are significantly less casts in this dungeon, meaning that Avenger's Shield has a little less value. But you can definitely still lock down some mobs that do have some dangerous casts, which will allow your DPS to, well, DPS. With many mobs in here being mechanical, Blinding Light also has little functionality, and while Hammer of Justice is strong, Group CC seems to be much stronger than single target. Anyways, Lightsmith played almost exactly the same as it does on live, honestly just kind of boring. I didn't really feel the luck of the draw set either, even when it did proc. Despite being able to spam Shield of the Righteous a little more often during that window, it didn't really change the flow of the class. The best part about Lightsmith isn't really the damage anymore. I think it's more of the additional group healing that it provides with Tempered in Battle and Bulwarks. Obviously, Hand of Sacrifice, Lay on Hands, Blessing of Protection, Spell Warding, and Freedom are all as powerful as they have been, but that's really where the potency of this tank, and specifically this hero talent, stops. With the new dungeon design philosophy shift, I just see more of an emphasis on group healing and survivability than having constant kicks. So don't get me wrong, Paladin's still good, it just seems a little less valuable in these dungeons. Or in this dungeon. I wasn't necessarily impressed with the Paladin gameplay after this run. We did time it, and not only that, but we actually plus 2'd it, but I was more concerned with the uptime of the tier set. It's only one run, but Shield of the Righteous damage is clearly higher than we see represented on live, and Refining Fire is actually slightly lower, which I think is Blizzard's intended design goal. More importantly, we also want to know the uptime on the set bonus. Sadly, and similar to Protection Warrior, we're only seeing an 11% uptime and 5% on Guardian of Ancient Kings. I made it a goal this run not to actually use Guardian of Ancient Kings, it actually wasn't even on my bar. I wanted to figure out how much time we also added to our Luck of the Draw buff by casting Shield of the Righteous. Sadly, the math just doesn't really work out that well because we leave combat with the buff still active. So for example, we saw 18 procs of Luck of the Draw, which would put this at a base 180 seconds, which is 3 minutes, which is already lower than what Details is stating here. This is a great example of why the extension isn't necessarily great, nor the tier set. Getting the proc at the end of the poll is kind of rough. My overall opinion is Lightsmith is just meh. It does what it needs to do. It does enough damage to maintain threat, and it kicks the mobs that you need to kick, but it's nothing to write home about. The real juice of this hero talent and spec comes from their helpful utility spells, like their bulwarks and armaments, as well as their group defensives. But if you're looking to blast big fucking damage, let me introduce you to Templar. I haven't played Templar since the start of Season 1, and for good reason. The hero talent was always kind of clunky, as you needed to decide to spend your Holy Power on Hammer of Light or Shield of the Righteous, so you're basically deciding between damage and survivability. The rework to Undisputed Ruling, though, makes this a no-brainer choice. For those who haven't played Templar, it basically works like this. Whenever you cast Eye of Tyr, for the next few seconds, your Eye of Tyr can be recasted, but as Hammer of Light, which deals massive damage. The hero talents in this tree also build on this by providing cool bonuses like increased haste, absorb shields, and now extra mitigation with Shield of the Righteous. The gameplay loop, though, really focuses on Shake the Heavens. This is a buff that you gain after casting Hammer of Light, which causes hammers to rain down, dealing large amounts of damage. You can then extend this buff by casting various spells. As it stands on PTR, it's very easy to extend this buff almost indefinitely while in combat, which is so fun. The new tier set really pushes into this by refunding Holy Power. Hammerfall makes your spenders, i.e. Shield of the Righteous, call down a hammer and an additional one while you have Shake the Heavens active. The reason that this is important is after you have 60 hammers fall, you get to cast Hammer of Light again for free without needing to cast Eye of Tyr, meaning that you can extend the Shake the Heavens buff, do big AoE damage, and continue to rain down hammers constantly. When I brought this into a floodgate, I was not disappointed. The entire gameplay loop is incredibly fast-paced, which isn't necessarily different, but it feels more aggressive than the Lightsmith counterpart. But there really isn't anything else to say here. It's very fun and hammer go boom boom. The uptime was similar. We saw an 11% uptime on Luck of the Draw, and give or take 5% on Guardian of Ancient Kings. Unlike some of the other classes I've explored so far, there isn't really much changing about the Paladin. If anything, it does get better. I will say that the Paladin crowd control kit in this dungeon specifically is slightly lackluster. Blinding Light doesn't really work against multiple targets in here, and Hammer of Justice isn't the best for the amount of group control you're going to want. Luckily, most classes do bring group CC, so it's not the end of the world. Avenger Shield is also still great for some casts in here, and obviously having abilities like Blessing of Protection and Spell Warding are great, as always. Lightsmith, while not dealing insane damage, does bring Tempered in Battle and Bulwark still, which can help do some of the heavy lifting when it comes to group healing, which is always going to be valuable. My only true complaint does come down to the uptime of the tier set. Similar to Warrior, I personally saw really low uptime on Luck of the Draw and Guardian of Ancient Kings. Luck of the Draw extensions on the 4 set is great on paper, but in keys, unlucky procs near the end of a pull definitely hurt the tier set more than it can help. And also, RNG returns on Holy Power, they're fine because they don't necessarily hurt your mitigation, but it tends to leave your overall damage at the hands of chance. Luckily, it doesn't necessarily hurt your mitigation, but it does have issues with multiple buffs including Shake the Heavens, Luck of the Draw, and of course all of your cooldown reduction based talents. Guardian of Ancient King also doesn't necessarily interact with the class much. Other tanks have more interesting interactions like Metamorphosis, for example, on the Demon Hunter. Overall though, I can't complain about this tier set. I'm looking forward to playing Paladin as an alt in patch 11.1. Anyways, let me know what you guys think down below, and of course a massive shout out to all my Patreon supporters because without them, I couldn't make content like this. I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.